This is a video that is about both process and subject matter. The subject matter is pretty simple. Is there a correlation between a state's median income and its dentists per capita? My guess is the obvious one, that there is a positive correlation between median household income and how many dentists a state has. But let's look at some data and see if that is true, and how true it is. My data comes from 2019, from the US Census and the National Institute of Health. After popping in the data and creating a scatter plot, we find that there is a correlation. That is obvious just from looking at the picture, and also by looking at the R-squared, 0.64. But the plot is still interesting enough that there are some outliers. What might be the reason for that? When we look closer at those 51 data points, we see a few things sticking out. I have labeled the outliers. The dots above the line represent states with more dentists than could be expected for its income level, while those below the line have less. Washington, D.C. has a much higher amount of dentists than we could expect for its income level, while Maryland, New Hampshire, Utah, and Delaware are below. On the left of the diagram, Mississippi, New Mexico, Alabama, and Arkansas have low incomes and few dentists per capita, although none of them is that far from the line. Another interesting point above the line is Alaska. Most of those outliers can be explained fairly well with a little thought, especially when we look at the definitions in the data. The data describes dentists to include not just practicing dentists, but also teachers, staff, and some students in dental schools. One of the states above the line, Massachusetts, is home to 3 separate dental schools, including Harvard Dental School. New Hampshire is under the line, and a reasonable explanation for that is that many residents of that state can easily travel to Massachusetts for advanced dental procedures. Washington, D.C. is also home to a dental school and is also one of the headquarters of the American Dental Association. Maryland and Virginia are below the line, and many of their residents live close to Washington, D.C. This is probably also a reason why Delaware is below the line. It is a suburban area that is close to urban hubs. So, most of the most prominent outliers on this scatter plot can be explained with a little bit of common sense. Alaska is another outlier that seems easy to explain. Because much of its population lives in small, distant towns, it needs more dentists. A city of 1,000 people that is 500 miles from a larger city needs dentists in a way that a city of 1,000 people 5 miles from a larger city does not. By saying that these explanations are easy, I am not saying that they are 100% correct. There could be other reasons for them, or the data I am using could be inaccurate in some way. However, my main point of this is to point out that the process of making guesses doesn't have to be super technical. You don't need a server farm, and you don't need multivariable analysis or complicated functions to make common sense guesses about why different states or countries might have different demographic patterns. The distant towns in Alaska are different than the suburbs of Northern Virginia, and that is a common sense thing to believe, and we can make guesses using it. I used a pretty simple example to illustrate this, income and dentists, but the principle can be applied to much more meaningful and controversial topics, which I may cover in the future.